gonna die that night. I can't describe it to you.
Please reach out to me.
Terrifying love, to a certain degree.
The house on Frigate Drive was quiet on the afternoon of February 25th, 2020. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, just a blue hard-shell suitcase lying in the middle of the living room floor. When deputies arrived, Jorge Torres Jr. was already cold. His body had been folded into the small space, his life extinguished by a lack of oxygen. Standing nearby was his girlfriend, Sarah Boone. She told the officers it was a tragic accident, a game of hide-and-seek fueled by alcohol that had gone horribly wrong. She claimed she went upstairs, fell asleep, and forgot he was trapped inside. It was a plausible story, if a bit careless, until detectives looked at her phone. What they found wasn't a tragic mistake. It was 2 videos, recorded in the dark, capturing the final moments of a man's life. In the footage, the suitcase is moving. Jorge is screaming Sarah's name.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
He is telling her he can't breathe, and Sarah Boone isn't screaming back in a panic. She is laughing.
Yeah, that's when you choke me, Sarah.
The case of Sarah Boone is often categorized as a domestic homicide, but that label feels too simple. It is a study in a specific kind of psychological detachment, a moment where the resentment of a volatile relationship curdled into something much darker. It's the story of a woman who didn't just kill her partner, she filmed the process and then spent the next 4 years convinced she was the real victim. Jorge and Sarah's relationship was a cycle of what investigators call situational couple violence. Both had been arrested in the past for battery against each other. Their lives in Winter Park, Florida, were defined by a toxic tether. They couldn't seem to live together, but they wouldn't stay apart. On the night of February 24th, they were drinking Chardonnay and working on a puzzle. Sarah would later tell police that they decided it would be funny to see if Jorge could fit in the suitcase. In her initial interview, Sarah is helpful. She's soft-spoken, appearing exhausted and grieving. She describes the scene with a sense of whimsical regret. They were laughing, she said. It was all a joke. She zipped him in, went upstairs to bed, and assumed he could get himself out. But when detectives sit her down for a formal interrogation a few days later, the atmosphere shifts. They have the phone, they have seen the footage, and they are about to watch Sarah Boone realize that her accident has a digital footprint. The interrogation is a masterclass in defensive psychology. As the detectives begin to poke holes in her timeline, Sarah doesn't crumble, she doesn't weep with guilt. Instead, she becomes indignant. Her body language shifts from a grieving partner to a frustrated schoolteacher. She sighs, she rolls her eyes, she corrects the detective's grammar. When they finally play the video for her, the room goes silent. On the screen, the blue suitcase is vibrating as Jorge thrashes inside. "Jorge, I can't breathe, babe," Jorge pleads. Sarah's voice on the recording is cold, almost mocking. "That's what I feel like when you choke me," she responds. "Jorge, I can't breathe," he gasps again. "That's on you," she says. "Oh, that's what I feel like when you cheat on me." In the interrogation room, the real-time Sarah watches her recorded self with a look of detached curiosity. She doesn't see a dying man, she sees a justification. She tells the detectives that at the time she thought he could get out. She says the video doesn't capture the context of their relationship. To Sarah, the fact that Jorge was terrified didn't matter as much as the fact that he had upset her in the past. It was a distorted form of cosmic justice, administered in a living room while the wine was still wet in the glasses. This is the point where the mystery shifts. It's no longer about what happened. The video proves that. It becomes about the why. Why did she record it? Why didn't she unzip the bag when the screaming stopped? Psychologically, Sarah Boone exhibits what experts call narcissistic rage, a reaction to a perceived slight that is wildly disproportionate to the offense. In her mind, Jorge's past infidelities and his own history of violence gave her a hall pass for cruelty. She wasn't zipping him in a suitcase to kill him, she argued. She was zipping him in to make him listen. She wanted a captive audience for her grievances. The fact that he died was, in her eyes, a secondary detail to the fact that she was finally being heard. As the months turned into years, the case became a legal quagmire. Sarah Boone went through 8 different lawyers. She wrote long handwritten letters to the judge, filled with complex vocabulary and a sense of profound persecution. She complained about the jail food, the lighting in the courtroom, and her incompetent counsel. She seemed less concerned with the murder charge and more concerned with how she was being perceived. She didn't want to be seen as a killer, she wanted to be seen as a misunderstood intellectual. The letters are perhaps the most revealing part of her psychological profile. They are devoid of any mention of Jorge's loss. There is no grief for the man she spent years with. There is only the injustice of her own confinement. She describes her situation as a conspiracy, a failure of the system to recognize her intent. In the legal world, intent is everything. For a second-degree murder conviction, the prosecution had to prove Sarah acted with a depraved mind, regardless of human life. Sarah's defense eventually landed on battered woman syndrome. They argued that her actions weren't a choice, but a survival mechanism, a brain-fogged reaction to years of abuse.
But the video remains the ultimate witness. It's hard to argue survival when you are the one holding the camera, standing over a zipped bag and taunting the person inside. The footage shows a power dynamic that had completely inverted. For those few minutes in the living room, Sarah Boone had absolute control. She was the narrator of Jorge's life, and she chose to end the story. The trial, which finally took place in late 2024, was a spectacle of this specific brand of defiance. Sarah took the stand, a move most defense attorneys consider suicidal. For hours, she sparred with the prosecutor. She was pedantic, she was argumentative. She refused to give simple yes or no answers. She wanted to explain the nuance of her trauma. She seemed to believe that if she could just find the right words, the jury would understand that Jorge's death was simply a byproduct of her own emotional journey. But the jury saw something else. They saw the 11 minutes of footage. They saw the photos of the suitcase, which had been kicked and pushed, as evidenced by the scuff marks on the floor. They saw the medical examiner's report detailing the bruises on Jorge's body where he had tried to push against the hard plastic shell of the bag. When the verdict finally came down, guilty of second-degree murder, Sarah Boone's expression didn't change. She didn't collapse. She looked at the judge with the same sense of annoyed disappointment she had shown the detectives 4 years earlier. The aftermath of the case leaves a lingering, uncomfortable question about the nature of domestic cruelty. We often expect killers to look like monsters, but Sarah Boone looked like a neighbor. She looked like someone who just had a bit too much to drink and a lot of resentment. The horror of the suitcase murder isn't just the way Jorge Torres died, it's the silence that followed the recording. It's the fact that after she stopped filming, after the screaming stopped and the suitcase went still, Sarah Boone went upstairs. She didn't check on him, she didn't have a change of heart, she went to sleep. She left him in the dark, folded in half, waiting for a morning that she knew would never come for him. And in the years since, she has never once apologized for the silence. In her mind, she is still waiting for the world to apologize to her. There is a final image from the evidence files that stays with you. It's not the video. It's a photo of the puzzle they were working on before the game started. It's half finished on the table, a peaceful scene of a landscape. It sits just a few feet away from where the suitcase was found. It's a reminder of how quickly a mundane Tuesday night can dissolve into a nightmare, and how thin the line is between a life shared and a life taken. Jorge Torres Jr. spent his final moments in a 30-inch space listening to the laughter of the woman he loved. Sarah Boone spent the rest of her life trying to convince the world that his screams were just a misunderstanding. But the camera doesn't misunderstand, it records. And what it recorded on Frigate Drive was the sound of a person who had stopped seeing her partner as a human being and started seeing him as a problem that could be zipped away.